Hey, welcome back to our Fire Engineering Humpday Hangout. The issues and challenges of today's fire service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, and I'm here again with our team minus one. Chief Salka is teaching at the training days down in Virginia. He's going to try. His class is buttoned up right against our time here, so he's going to try and join us. But we've got Chief Scott Thompson from the Colony, a longtime FDIC instructor, author for the magazine, and of the best-selling book, The Functional Fire Company. We got Assistant Chief Curtis Birt, our longtime friend, another long-ass time FDIC instructor. And Curtis and I go way back to where they have real pizza and real beef sandwiches and hot dogs on the south side of Chicago and southwest side. But we've got another great show for you today. We have a special guest again, but we've mentioned him. Golly, Curtis, even before we talk about Jay all the time. We've got Chief Jay Taylor, the chief from Pearland, Texas, Curtis's boss. Jay, real quick, let's a little bio on yourself, a little background, because it's an interesting background. There's a couple of things I really love about you. One, having been an athlete and all that stuff, but little history on Chief Jay Taylor.
Well, I don't know where to start with that, but, did grow up being an athlete just like yourself, Rick. Rick was passionate about baseball, played every sport. I was a, four-sport athlete. Was fortunate to be an all-state athlete in Oklahoma. Played college football, ran track in college. Grew up with four buddies that none of us knew anything about public safety, knew no one in public safety, and they all got into public safety before I did. And because of them, I made a career change at one point and decided to put myself through Tarrant County Regional Fire Academy in Fort Worth and went through class 11 just to see if I liked it. First week, I fell in love with it and realized that's what I wanted to do the rest of my career. Fast forward, worked in Addison, Texas for a year, city of Irving, Texas, Metro Department up in North Texas for over 25 years. Then had an opportunity to go to Trophy Club, complete 180 from Irving, going from 415 firefighters to 15 with 15 part-time. And so that was a great learning experience for me. And then been down here for a little over right about almost 2.5 years now, and inherited a great department with a lot of wonderful people here in Pearland. And it's the Irving I hired into really back in the day. It's the same size geographically. It's a growing city. It's gone from 30,000 to 140,000 really quickly. It's still growing. We currently have 6 firehouses, about to have our 7th. 8th and 9th are coming soon thereafter. And I inherited, Curtis, Chief Birt, as you see there. And, like I always say, it's better to have people around you that are smarter than you are to make you look good. So I was blessed to have that happen. And we've accomplished a lot of great things in a short period of time, moving this department forward. And it's because of a lot of great buy-in from the folks here. And we're a fire-based EMS with full transport capability. So I'm just as passionate about the fire side as I am the EMS side. We were talking offline about that because I know you are as well. So just excited about what the future holds here. The gavel's going to drop on the budget next Monday, so we can take a deep breath and then just collectively start into FY25 and really kind of fine-tuning some other things as we move forward. I appreciate you having me here today.
Well, we love having you on it. We've talked about it, plenty of times, and today's topic's perfect for that. But Pearland, I've been down there. I've been blessed and honored to come down and visit with you guys a lot. And John and I both, Salka and I, and there's it's kind of funny. You kind of skipped over the growth thing. We're kind of growing still. Like, holy cow, are you still growing? The whole Houston metro area down there is anything outside the city there is booming. Huge. I remember going to Pearland years ago, and they're like, "Yeah, all this open's going to be built," and now you drive, and I'm like, it's still going, it's still growing, and you got great people there. So we're honored to have you here, Chief. Real quick, Chief Thompson, your background, is that like? Did you pick that? Is that like a virtual background you picked, or where are you at, Brother Scott? Where are you at today? Oh, Scott can hear me or not?
Sorry.
Scott, where are you at today, buddy?
College Station, Texas A&M University here, presenting at the Texas EMS Alliance. So I grabbed a room here in the corner of the hotel and got a nice view out the back. So glad to be joining you guys.
That's funny. I was doing a Zoom meeting the other day with the advisory board I'm on, and I picked some virtual thing because I had boxes everywhere. It was like a boardroom with all these empty chairs. I go, yeah, this is my team, you know. But you're right. And,
Big helicopter flew over a minute ago. We just missed it. And I'm right by a train track, so you'll probably hear that train whistle that comes through here every 5 seconds.
Great country western song for you.
Or the 11th man, somebody, well, it's not Friday, so they're not doing that. So, well, it's great to have everybody here. So today's topic is something we've talked about doing. As our listeners know, and everybody here knows, we never use a script. That was Terry McGrath's, we love Terry. We miss Terry. Terry was a great partner to have on the show, but when he went to work for the state, they're like, well, we don't mind you being on the show, but the PIO has to approve your script every time, so nothing is said wrong. And I understand it. That happens in a lot of agencies, but I'm like, we don't use it. We don't use a script. We just kind of, that's it. We just do what we're going to do. So, but we do come up with the topics. We'll come up with a topic. And one of the things we've talked about for a while, and this was perfect, having your chief on, your boss, Curtis J, come on, is, the large scale is, you got the guys out there mowing right now, large scale incidents and, the planning, preparing, and handling them from start to finish. Because we talk a lot about it. We talk about, well, we would do this if this happened, this happened, this happened. Some people walk through it, but I think there's certain things, Jay, that we never really finish with. And it's like when we do the Mayday classes, Curtis, remember, it's like you do the Mayday class and it's over. And I'm like, no, it's not over. We still have a fire to fight.
It just began.
Yeah. Let's talk about returning to normalcy. And there's, hours, days, weeks, months, and sometimes years of recovery efforts and things like that. Reminder real quick for our viewers, if you have a question, we always try to get to them. Sometimes we can't in our hour, but shoot over to one of the social media sites, especially X, formerly known as Twitter, and send us a message. Just make sure you put hashtag FE Talk, so our producer Mark will get them and throw them out there. But so let's talk about this. Let's talk large scale incidents. We talk structure fires all the time, and that's all great, and MCIs and hazmat and things like that. But Jay, you just did. It's like just set your watch, and you're going to have another one. You guys in Florida with the hurricanes, in Louisiana, the whole coming off the Gulf, let alone on the Atlantic side, the East Coast side for Florida. But I was watching a lot of your posts from your department during, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before. And I've always been amazed, and I've always been honored to be part of, the big picture. I've always told people I'm the one you want your unified command post, because I don't do the ego thing, and I'll run and get you coffee, or I'll be in command or whatever if we're supporting law enforcement or whatever. But there's so many pieces and parts to the puzzle. Scott's in an area that's just booming, growing with large sports complexes and things that Disney's building. And, the colony is just exploding with growth. Plus they've got their end of Lake Louisville. Lake Louisville tracks all kinds of people all throughout.
All kinds of stuff.
So, I mean, nobody's immune to it. Hell, FDNY, 9/11, God help, just a horrible incident proved to the rest of the world that nobody could do by themselves. Chicago had the great Chicago flood. Remember, Curtis, first time we went mutually to Chicago was, with the lighting unit when they had the flood. Eddie Enright found that down the tunnels. Nobody could do it by themselves. But so Jay, walk us. I mean, I don't know, maybe let's start this with the whole planning. That there's one coming again, whether it's hurricane season or not, and forget even the tornadoes that you guys get. But let's just talk, the large scale, because there's so much planning down by you that goes into this before it ever. They're not even talking about it right now. Let's talk about the plan you have before we even get to running the incident. So walk us through your thought process on that.
Absolutely, Rick. And you touched on it saying unified. You have to check your ego at the door, and it's a collective effort, for us in Pearland. And for those who don't know, Pearland is located between Galveston and Houston. We run the south border of Houston. So if that gives you a little bit of perspective, we're 35 minutes from Galveston. So we're really close to the water. So the preparation is year round. It's just, you play like you practice. And so every entity, whether it's our engineering, public works, fire, police, every entity that has something to do with the city structure here, our water plants, our generation, the generators we use on all our city facilities, things that you don't normally think about till you need them. Those are things that have to be prepared, primed, prepped throughout the year. There's people that do that, and that's part of that collective plan. We have an emergency management coordinator, Peter Martin, who's stellar at what he does. He used to be an officer and a leader down on the Coast Guard in South Texas, and has a tremendous amount of experience, but he understands the big picture. And when we have the amount of named storms we're supposed to have on the docket this year, and we're really in the meat of hurricane season right now. And, Curtis and I both came from North Texas most recently. And so for us, we're dealing with tornadoes where they come relatively quickly, as we all know, blowing in from West Texas on a weekly basis up in North Texas. Here, we would joke about it when we got here. Well, we have 8 days to plan. We're fine. Well, it takes a lot more than 8 days. It's those collective efforts, and it's our STEER registrants. In the state of Texas, we have the State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. We call it STEER, and those are our folks that are on those medical equipment devices that they need to have, and they need to have power for at their homes, and we need to know who they are and what their needs are when we have loss of power, so that we can track them. And so that's an ongoing process that we have throughout the year, where we call and update them and know who they are and if they've moved, and if we have new ones that come in and register. Having a debris management program where our council has the emergency plans in place, that we have vendors that can come take our emergency debris. Hey, Chief. And he just popped in on us.
Keep going. He'll have to mute. John, you're gonna have to mute. We got your car in the background.
He's four-wheeling. But we have all that in place, and it's 12, it's all 12 months of the year getting prepared for that, because once hurricane season starts, you don't know when it's going to hit. And for us in Beryl, when we had Beryl hit in July, every spaghetti model had Beryl going towards Brownsville, the very south tip of Texas, which is a few hours from us. There was only one strand that had it turning towards the Houston, Galveston area. But with that, we still had to plan. And where this hit early in the morning on a Monday morning, we had our IMT, our incident management team, in place on Thursday preceding that. So we had the skeleton crew in place, making those ancillary decisions to start getting those pieces in place. And then we set our teams and got the EOC enacted on Sunday, in essence, the day before, and had everybody running. And so we had each respective department, it's having your double shifts and bringing your 12s and 12s on with your shifts, and making sure everybody's here, because you can't send everybody home, because here it floods so badly you can't get them back to work. So we have to have them here on campus, so to speak, at the respective firehouses. We have food purchases that take place on a large level, because here, for instance, at Fire Admin, we were feeding 80 members of engineering and public works here in this facility. And so we had to prepare for that ahead of time. We already have those plans in place. So not only is it from us from a strategic and operational perspective, our high water team, our LMTVs, our big trucks that go into the high water, those are all maintained, and we have all those things prepared for each year, all during the year. Our operations, our training, that's already taken place. We're ready for that. So from that perspective, it's just another day for us operationally, but just putting those components in place and then coordinating with the other parts of the city to make sure that we hit all the marks. Our EOC was very impressive how they ran it, and coordination was really well done. I will say there were a few municipalities around us and some counties that really chose to wait till the very last moment to make those preparations, and it really caught them with their pants down. And fortunately for us, we were prepared, we weathered it, and we hit it. We had several CPRs during that time frame. We had 8 hours of high winds up around over 80 miles an hour. We had 12 inches of rain. We came within a couple of inches of those going over the banks and having another Hurricane Harvey situation. We were that close, literally within 15 minutes probably. We got very fortunate with that. But since Harvey, they've learned about making those infrastructure improvements to not only in Harris County, Houston, but down through our area, so that watershed's quicker. And so that really benefited us in the situation where we didn't have the high water on top of everything else we were dealing with. So we had a lot of high wind. We had the issues where we went from 0 to 265 responses in no time, which is a pretty huge jump, and several
Jay,
CPRs. Go ahead.
Jay, I want to back up just for a second here because you made me think about something. First of all, having someone that worked in the Coast Guard, is incredible because of everything they do when it comes to disaster management is just huge. Besides the country, and by the way, to our Air Force vets, our Air Force veterans, happy birthday to the United States Air Force today. Today's their birthday, the Air Force. But so Jay, before I get back to you, I want to look at Scott and then your ops chief Curtis, because you said something about some people getting caught short, and it even goes back to me first started about checking generators and checking equipment and making sure supply everything's there before anything happens. The motivation part of this is Scott, I want to ask you, then Kurt, and then back to you, Jay, and then John, keeping people motivated. I said this before live that back in the old days, we used to make fun of civil defense people, the CD guys, the white helmets running around, shut off your lights. And then they changed it to ESDA, Emergency Services Disaster Agency. We call them ESDA geeks, all the antennas. Then 9/11 hit, and we realized just how important emergency management is, disaster management, debris management, all those different things. The degrees became inflated in a great way where we start recognizing those people in that field, and then it takes all of us to pull this stuff off. So before we even get going with the rest of this and handling the incident, Scott, what do you look for? How do you keep your people motivated? Because it's like, right, people, it's like the sky's fault. Chief Thompson's always telling us, we got to go check the generators. We have to go check this. We haven't used that in 3 years. We haven't used it in 4. And lo and behold, when you do need it, it's not going to start. How do you as a boss keep your people motivated where they're just like, I'll just check off the list and let's be done with this, checking all this generators, supplies, all this stuff. How do we've got extra cots, all this stuff that we've never used. How do you keep people motivated, Scott?
Well, that's a great question, Rick. And, I'm one of those that got my degree in emergency management. As far as I know, I was the 5th person in the country to get that degree a million years ago at North Texas. But in our system, it's an extension to our day-to-day. We actually have a preparedness standard where every day we're saying we're mentally, physically, mechanically, and procedurally prepared. And so, it's that mission mindset every day. So when we have to step it up, our guys understand our capabilities and our limitations, and it's really a mindset thing. If you break it down, it's a mindset. Are you going to take this seriously, or are you not? And I think our culture just supports that. Every day is kind of a new day. What's the Navy SEALs motto? Yesterday was the only easy day. And so, our guys take it pretty serious. And so we can get them ramped up pretty quick. We had some real challenges when that weather storm came through that we had, a couple of years ago. And that really challenged us. Of course, like Jay mentioned, we have the tornado. So we're always talking about it. And we look at it in terms of our limitations and the capabilities of the system. And then just, maximizing that when we think we have a threat coming in. We got the chance of an airplane coming down on top of us. Of course, we got the tornado, all the weather events. We're getting a little more concerned about the civil aspect of stuff. Who knows what's going to happen after this next election? So I think it's just a mindset across the organization where everybody just understands that this is our responsibility and our success comes from our preparation. And you can't debate that. If you don't prepare, and if you're successful, it's because you're lucky, not because you're good.
What they say, fail to prepare is preparing to fail, right? That whole thing. And
Right.
So Curtis, you work, and I'm not trying to embarrass him, but you work for a great boss. You talk about Chief Taylor all the time. And, we've not always had that opportunity to work for leaders who get it. But so as his ops chief, he does a lot of bragging on you, but you've got some great people. John and I and Scott, we've all met them. The firefighters at Pearland are pretty freaking incredible. What do you say to your battalion chiefs and even your company officers? Go one more level down when it comes to keeping the troops motivated, because like I said, down where you're at, it's not a matter of, well, I wonder when we'll have the next hurricane or the next tornado. It's like, get your watches, because about the time you think you're past one, you've got another one coming.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get to the aftermath later on in that. But, you remember, Curtis, when we were in Chicago, the Six Bulls championships. The first one, they burnt down the city. The second one, they had cops everywhere on the window stuff, and nothing happened. Then the third one, then they said, we're good. The fourth one, they burnt the city down. Then it's like, yeah, complacency kills, and it's just a fancy word for laziness. But what do you do to keep your battalion chiefs and your officers, your company officers, again, taking this stuff seriously? And let me real quick for you answer. I mentioned before the Minnesota bridge collapse. President Bush talked about it was one of the best run disasters he had ever seen, and it served as a model. My buddy Rocco Forte, that was the chief of Minneapolis, will end up being the OEM director there. And we're going to get to this with your chief again about debris management and all that stuff. The keys, the whole system of all the stuff we planned for. The sky is falling. Nobody ever thought that the boulder will roll down on the mountain, hit the train, flip into the water, poison the water system, catch an air tanker on fire, the orphanage, all that different stuff. And then in Minneapolis, the train, the bridge collapses, the cars into the water, people trapped, everything's, rush hour, and everything played out historically in a great way for a horrible incident because they planned. What do you do to keep your people motivated?
I think the biggest thing is, like Scott said, is make it the culture of how we do it, and we're preparing for everything. The less that we can, and we talked about this when we did Mayday, and we talked RIT all those years, is don't make this such an enormous event that it's going to kick you off your normals. So if we're always being prepared, and we're always checking for everything we do, whether it be, going out to help somebody back into their bed, or it's a hurricane that came through, it all has to be the same thing. Like Scott said, it's the mission. We got to be prepared for it, and don't make a hurricane coming or something else so out of our realm of normalcy that guys just lose it, or somebody loses it because we're not doing it. The other thing we really do, and it's really hard for us sometimes because we live it every day, but working in the EOC and work with these other departments, is we keep everything in incident command, and we live that. I mean, we don't go to the bathroom or go eat lunch without incident command in the fire service. And if we keep that and we push the EOC to follow it, and we push all these other departments to follow it, we can all communicate better, and we all get things done more. So when we talk with whether they're, facilities is checking our generators, or we're checking our high water vehicles, or we have Public Works doing something with us, or these, we all follow that, but we all make it to where it's a normal thing, not a freak out thing.
Well, it's one thing, during a storm in some places to have, you go to leave your station and power's out, or the doors don't open. You can't even get out the rig, get the rig out the door. And let's say it's a CPR. I mean, just people rely on us, and they expect us to be the planners and those that are prepared to do what we have to do. And then when we can't fulfill our mission, it makes us all look bad. And so prepare for the big one has to be there. Jay, let me throw something at you real quick. We could talk about motivating the troops and stuff, but Palm Beach County, Florida used to have it in their policy, I hope they still do, where in their hurricane policy and their disaster policy, the very first section is what they do for their first responders and their first responders' immediate families before it ever hits. Because the problem used to be guys thinking about abandoning their posts. My husband, my wife, and kids are at home. What do I do? And you're not even thinking straight. So they had a whole plan of what they would do to make sure the members of the department could be okay. My family's taken care of. We've got to evacuate it, or they're secure, or whatever, so on and so forth. Is there anything that you do in that area to give your people peace of mind? So they're not sitting there, things going on in their head. Is my family okay right now, or whatever, knowing that things are taken care of?
It's a great question. And I think that I wasn't here for Harvey. I wasn't in this part of the world for Harvey. I was in North Texas, but there were some learning points that came through that aftermath of Harvey. And that's one of the points that were learned. And everybody was so focused and worried about their own families, and some houses were being damaged, and some were being flooded, and families were being stranded. This time around, that plan in place is, we give our folks a time frame. We set the IMT up, the incident management team, up early on Thursday ahead of the actual barrel hit on early Monday morning. And so we actually upstaged EOC on Sunday, started bringing in our double staff crews. We started going to 12s with 2 crews. so that we could rest and work and everybody be at the station. Because once they leave, they can't get back here because we have that flooding risk here in this area, in this part of the world. So we give everybody that few days notice that, hey, this is about to happen. Get your families in order. If you need to send them out, but do what you need to do so that you're not worried about their health and welfare, and what can we do to help you during that time frame. So we give them that lead time to try to get those things handled, and what can we do to help you with that as well. We do have some families that have spouses that are in similar professions. Maybe they're in the nursing profession, or they're somewhere where they're subject to be recalled as well. So we do have signed documents that we have that if people opt out, that there's a hardship with one parent or another where both could be deployed or brought back to their place of work during a disaster, that they have that signed document. So one of the spouses, for us, we may not recall them because their spouse is subject to that where they live. So we work through those as well. We actually have a very limited number of those that we actually had this year. And I think we had 6 or 8 altogether. When at the end of the day, before the hurricane actually hit, I think all but one were able to cancel that document because their spouses weren't recalled. So we put those measures in place. We have a lot of other measures in place from the city perspective. Is, everything doubles up. We have a food purchasing plan, but we have for our outreach coordinator, she goes out and has a plan where they buy food for all the firehouses. Because not only do we have our staff there, but we may have public works staff coming into the firehouses and other people that are out in that area that might get stranded that are city workers. So we have a plan to feed all of them. Here at Fire Administration, where we're sitting right now, we fed over 80 public works personnel throughout that process. So we got all the food here, had to purchase that ahead of time, but there's a lot of planning that goes with that. So we're talking to our steer registrants. Those are our folks out in the community. They're susceptible to medical devices that keep them going, whether they're on ventilators or other medical devices that they need that power, and we keep them notified throughout the year. We'll keep them with our steer registrants, that's our state of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry, to make sure that when the event we lose power, we know that that's someone that we need to get to and provide that help.
Talk about that real quick. Talk before we glance over that. Talk about that particular, the acronym and the organization you just talked about. How is that set up?
So the STEER program is a state of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. It's for those people that are susceptible medically, that have those ancillary medical devices that they're relying on that help them survive on a daily basis. And so they're at high risk whenever you're at a potential of losing power. So throughout the year, we have in our city, we use our code enforcement in conjunction with our emergency management team to, throughout the year, check in with those registrants that we have in Pearland so that we know where they are, what their location is, what their medical needs are, and what their device needs are, so that if we need to evacuate, we're able to do that. If we're able to get them ancillary care, we can do that. We also send medics out to check on them and do health checks, wellness checks on them as well. So it's a very productive plan. It takes a little bit of coordination to keep that going, but it was very well done through this. I was very impressed with our code enforcement folks, how they worked with. We have code enforcement under the fire department here, which is a little bit different than a lot of cities, but there's a lot of benefits to that. But our personnel, they jumped in and were able to make the phone calls, and our paramedics, boots on the ground, we had people identified to go make those wellness checks on these folks, and it worked really well for us. But maintaining that program, and if folks are in areas in small towns or you're a volunteer department, you may not have something to that magnitude, but you can coordinate that at your local level to make sure that you have those registrants and put a plan in place so that you can keep track of them and know where they are, so you can get to those susceptible folks first and provide them the care that they need.
And that's statewide.
It is statewide in Texas, yes.
And see, that's something for years I was like, God, this was such a need. We used to go to the senior centers and the Meals on Wheels to try and get addresses of those that might be, when we get, like Scott, that cold spell, Texas, it's not Minnesota, Chicago, Michigan, they deal well, the Dakotas with severe weather. You get that going and people without heat,
Texas, get in trouble in a hurry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, or like we had in Chicago, Curtis, with the humidity and the heat, and not knowing, okay, are we just going to drive up and down the street in a loudspeaker? We knock on doors, but to have addresses, Jay, to have, a database of, okay, hey, let's get out and do well-being checks. Let's get out and knock on doors and make sure our at-risk, like you said, people, that their needs are being addressed. Wintertime, I remember we used to go there and go, knock on the door. Hi, Mrs. Johnson. Can we come in? They let you in the fire department. Can we, we'd have our CO detectors with us, and just make sure that everything was good. They had heat, everything was, food, everything was in and out, and so on and so forth. What a great plan. That's why, I just what a great idea is having that. So,
well, it works great, and it's managed by the Texas Department of Emergency Management, and so, but it's coordinated locally. So at the grassroots level, you have to have coordination to be able to make that come to fruition, and to have that data when you need it, so that you can act on that. So it's very important. So having those things in place that people ask, what should we do to be prepared? Something similar to a STEER program if you're not in Texas, but if you do it at your own local level, you need to put something like that in place. Do you have a debris removal program? Does your city have contracts for emergency basis with third-party vendors that could come in and do debris removal after the fact? Obviously, you have your power companies coming in to try to restore power, but do you have windshield assessment? Do you have people in your city that are trained to impart windshield assessment so they can drive around and get an assessment on the damage, so that you can go to get those declarations? Because it's all about monetary. In the state of Texas, $51 million to have that declaration, to get that reimbursement. And it's all got to be coordinated. And you have to have people that are trained to be able to go impart those windshield assessments and have a place to collect that data and share that data. And it's a lot of moving parts, but you can't do it at the last second. You have to do it throughout the year and train your people repeatedly and get them trained not only in emergency operations, but everything else ancillary out in the field, so that you can coordinate that and ultimately get the reimbursement that you need, so that you're doing it the proper way. You educate your people on how to document, how to work within the documents within the EOC IMT process, and do it properly, so that you don't lose funding on the backside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back to the mundane stuff. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I don't know if it's different in other states, but in Texas, those where you stage your debris removal has to be certified by the state. You have to do that ahead of time.
Yes.
You can't have a disaster and start piling stuff somewhere. You're going to get fined for that. So all that stuff has to happen prior to the event. We're going through that now. We just had a wind event a month ago, and it exceeded what our predetermined debris collection areas were. And so we're working with the state now and the county to expand that. But, you got to have permits for those kind of things.
Well, yeah,
you do.
exactly.
Perfect.
Scott.
Yeah.
No,
You have that in place, and you have to separate your construction debris from your green debris. You can't mix those. And there's a lot of different, and FEMA watches this. It's so the third party vendor we bring in, they have all those licenses. They keep that up. And we actually had a dashboard in the city, so that all of our citizens or anyone else can come on there and see where those trucks were moving after the fact, what neighborhoods were they in. We gave them the time frames of, hey, you need to have your debris out on the street, and educate on. Our mayor was wonderful about educating our residents about keeping that CD separated from the green debris, and when it'll be out on the curb and where to put it. It doesn't matter how large it is. They can take everything from a full-size tree to a refrigerator. So that's all important. And those are little things. They sound like little things, but they're not. Those are the little things that set you apart. And those are little things, just like we tell our people every day, know your job, do your job, and have fun. But that's doing those little things that set you apart, not only as a crew, but then organizationally. And then that allows you to succeed on a grand level if you do that every day.
Well, exactly. It goes back to, I said before, the more mundane. It's like, well, the paperwork, who wants to record, nobody, how we have company officers that don't want to do reports for incidents, let alone someone tracking finances and a cost and being able to submit everything. So the impact as a risk manager goes beyond just the emergency stuff. It has to do with all the reimbursements, everything else to make you work. John, we've been losing you back and forth. There he is. So John, the question I had for you that I wanted to ask you before, all the years, well over 3 decades with our biggest fire department in North America, you guys have faced all kinds of large-scale incidents in New York City, and then 50 years, as a volunteer, and up in Orange County, you and I have talked about this before. You leave the city, you drive an hour and 20 minutes home, and you're up in the mountains with different little communities and towns. what do you do? We all know what New York City does to handle large scale incidents, and your guys are balanced. You have whole thousands of people that manage all different things. Talk about Orange County and what you've got set up there to handle anything large, whether it's storms, hurricanes. You guys have had that before up there in Orange County.
Yeah, it is, as you just described. Obviously, it's a much smaller scale than what you folks are talking about. You guys, I'm just so impressed listening to you guys talk about all the preparation and the organizations, the statewide programs and all that you have in place, which are wonderful. Even, the double shifts and feeding people and bringing public works people into the firehouse and all that. Wonderful, wonderful. And like, I think Scott said it, but I think several of you guys said it. You know what? It's the stuff that you do on a daily basis. You have these relationships with your other city departments and other agencies on a regular basis for ordinary day-to-day business. And then when the big event happens, you know the guy over at Public Works. You know the guy over at the hospital because you deal with him regularly already. It's hard to either establish or initiate those things, the day before a hurricane or the day after a hurricane. In Orange County, we are there's only two cities up there, and Newburgh and Middletown. Both of them are in fact cities. They have traditional city departments like you folks have. Everything else is either the county or towns or villages, which is that's like the jurisdictional breakdown in New York State. It's towns and villages and counties. The county takes a lead most of the time in this stuff. They've got a countywide communication system. Every department, police, fire, they're all registered and they operate under the umbrella of the county, the mutual aid system, which works out well. A lot of times during the year, I comment or think to myself without commenting, which I do less, but I should do more. Sometimes, they get involved in stuff that I find hard to believe. I can't believe that, like the county 9/11 system gets involved in the county parade, but they do. And they end up helping people cover their departments when maybe they're all going to be in one place on one day and they need extra coverage somewhere. And you know what? That ends up being very helpful for when the real stuff does happen. So in the end, my opinion doesn't really matter, but I'm wrong. And it ends up being really good that the county takes the lead because some towns and villages and fire districts, I don't think you guys have fire districts in too many other places, but we have publicly elected fire commissioners in fire districts that are their own public, their own agencies. And their boundaries overlap cities and counties and towns. And there's a little bit of, I'm trying to think of what you'd call it, duplication of services. Not services, but duplication of who thinks who's in charge, And the fire districts and fire commissioners rarely yield to anybody. But a lot of them, they're volunteers. It's a volunteer department, and even the commissioners are volunteers. They have their monthly meetings, and they're pretty effective on what they do on a regular basis. But when we got a hurricane coming, or we got a high wind event where there's power up for tens of thousands of people for days, suddenly they're a little impotent, actually. And suddenly the county is able to step up, and the county freely uses the county agencies, Department of Public Works and things like that, and they get a lot of stuff done. And they use the County Fire Academy and a couple of other county facilities as mustering points for people if they need stuff. So it works out pretty good, but most emergency agencies, I don't want to say we're on our own, but for the most part we are. We get assistance and support county, but they're not handing out too much stuff. They don't have too much physical material to hand out.
We lost John there. We'll get back to John in a second here. He's, as you can see, folks, he's traveling.
Drive through a tunnel.
Yeah. Well, so, and I want to hit him up for that because here's a guy that, worked in some of the busiest companies in New York City. He was there well before 9/11, well after 9/11, at 9/11, at the World Trade Center, and then in the rescue battalion for months afterwards. And, got to see this whole thing evolve from, the sky is falling to the sky actually did fall to how we handle that stuff and how we go. John, do I have you back now? Okay, not sure. So Jay, I want to go back to you here. Talk about the EOC, and let's get back to all the fingers leading out of the EOC. We talked about, in Pearland, obviously, we all know the EOC works, right? We got our finance people, we got public works, we have law enforcement, blah, blah, all that different stuff, debris, all that. And Curtis, you remember up in Illinois, the big thing with tornadoes, the biggest big thing was nails. Flat tires, flat tires everywhere with nails, millions of nails. But Jay, talk about the cooperation. Is it TDM that you work through, the Texas Department of Emergency Management, or so you've got a large scale incident coming to your area in Pearland. Let's name off some of the agencies that you work intimately with as part of the EOC outside of the Pearland city departments. Who do you reach out to?
We're going to reach out. Obviously, we're going to work in conjunction with our counties and our municipalities around us. So, obviously we have mutual aid agreements in place, and we're the big city in our county. So in Brazoria County. So
you still there, Jay?
I think he locked up.
Yeah. Well, so Curtis, let me throw that to you, because I know, TIFMAS, TDM, they just don't send resources without you guys requesting them. There's got to be that communication, that connection. I'll say this, the one thing I was spoiled with in Texas was the one phone call thing for like Wildland, Scott. It's like, we get a good significant, we're going to have Ryan Fetzer on from Wichita West in the near future talking about, large scale wildland incidents, him and me, Dwayne Burkfield from Wichita County Emergency Management. It was nice because you had one phone call, you make one phone call and you get all your dozers coming, you get your air support coming, you get TIFMAS units coming, you get people from all over the country, everything's, boom, 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 boom.
And it wasn't always like that.
And not everybody has that. Some places, you got to get out your directory and start calling everybody. I'm like, how ridiculous is that you still have to call multiple agencies to get cooperation instead of one phone call?
Wow.
Our good friend Terry McGrath is responsible, for years for coordinating, getting resources all over the state for everything from hail, tornadoes, flooding, electrical outages, water problems, wildland fires, hurricanes, everything. But it's one phone call. It's not like I have to call 9 people or 4 people or find out whose jurisdiction is it before I call someone. I call someone and they have the ability to figure all that stuff out so the locals can manage their incident. So,
Rick, you really had the model program in the Chicagoland area with Mavis. I'm continually impressed. Mike Arrico keeps me up with but that's a very impressive system that you guys had there.
Yeah, and the Mavis division has been around for a long time, but it was born and Kurt, it was there. I mean, I think maybe before even you and I, but I was there. I was part of the Mavis committee. It just made things easier because they brought in the box system, which is what we brought to North Texas. Scott and Curtis, bringing the box cards, because that was the thing that led to the TIFMAS stuff. People kind of skip over that. They talk about who started it, but they're like, no. I remember Denton County one, there was nothing going on. And we said, the whole north part of the county would whack all the resources and there'd be and the next day it'd be someone different. And we said, we got to do box cards. Remember, Kurt, you even wrote them, Curtis, we got to have some. So we put together the
task forces together to send all over the state.
Yeah, we put the Wildland Task Force together. We put the All Hazards Task Force, and it was amazing when we got up into the Panhandle. We got up north of Nocona, and I'll never forget that we got up there. First time there was no TIFMAS, and we rolled into town, went to the command, what they had set up as an EOC in the Public Works barn, and the guy, the fire marshal, goes, "Look," he looks at my patch. Look, so from down there, DF&W. I go, yeah. I go, we didn't jump it. It's official. Our county, emergency management quarter talked to yours and all that. He goes, we just came
we're
to
not
help
with the government, but we're here to help.
Yeah, and he goes, what'd you bring, a brush truck or an engine? I said, we brought 11 brush trucks, 6 tenders, 4 engines, 2 tillers. We brought our own mechanic, our own fuel supply, our own water, 4 command teams, our own communication system. You remember, Scott, what he says? He goes, Well, son, go out and get you some. I like,
Get you some.
what the hell is go out and get you some mean?
Go get you some.
Yeah, but you know what? The system worked, and the Wildland Task Force turned into something more from our county and counties to statewide, and then the all hazards. We able to send assets, and being able, when you guys have a hurricane going on down there, to send hundreds of ambulances and C-130s and transport vehicles to bring all these people back. Scott, you're 6 hours, 5 hours from them, and you're opening up your shelters for people from there during these incidents. Go ahead, buddy.
But Rick, that's a good point for our listeners who may be in less developed areas or rural areas. A lot of times we think of the box cards just for fire events, but you build them out for everything. You mentioned wildfire, hazmat, mass casualty. And so you have it where you can just say, hey, send me the next alarm or whatever you're calling it. That stuff's all predetermined. You're not drawing too much from one part of the county or the city. And those are all the things that we can do ahead of time to make sure these things, run smoothly.
Oh, exactly. And
Scott, you make a great point there. Oh, there's Rick. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, Kenny Hahn just popped up there with a comment about Wisconsin having a similar system to Mavis, because Mavis, especially after 9/11, grew. It went from like Illinois and southern Wisconsin. All of a sudden, it kind of branched out.
Indiana's got it.
Indiana, yeah, now.
Yeah, they started out there working it. So and Scott, you're right. It starts out with baby steps. It starts out with, Kurt, what we did, where let's just talk
have a plan. Simple
things like structural fires, MCIs, brush fires, a tender box card, tanker box card, investigative box card, hazmat, all those different things. And I had some chiefs down on the East Coast go, I don't want, they were worried about giving up power. I said, no, you actually have more power with the cards. I go, this is how easy it is. What do you send to a one alarm response now? Well, we send us and an engine from Beeperville, Bopperville, whatever. So I filled it out. I go, okay, now if you needed more help than that, who would you call? And so I wrote that down. I said, see, this is you. Nobody took your power away from you. In fact, you're more powerful when you have the card and you go to dispatch, and they don't even have to have CAD. They can just have a binder and go,
pull the card out and go to the next one.
Exactly. So the system works.
It doesn't have to be high tech. You can do it with, like you say, you can do it with a book. It doesn't have to be high tech. It's nice when it is.
Oh,
I'm a firm believer. A lot of this stuff is just like, even it runs into how we do things. When we were teaching RIT, we were even doing normal response to fires. Have a plan. Everybody be on the same page. Put it in the book. And like you said, it doesn't take power away from anybody. We just went to deployment models for structure fires and all that. And what it was to allow the battalion chief to think more by letting all their firefighters know what they're doing before they get there and giving them the responsibility to be firemen. We're doing the same thing in the EOC for these. Finance, here's your job. Guys, go do your job. And then we are relying on them to do their plan. We're relying on Public Works to do their plan. We're relying. But you have to think it out. You have to think it out before and train on it and put people together.
Oh, exactly. It's a pretty simple process, right? I mean,
very.
It takes a little bit of work to put it together. Don't get me wrong, but once it's there, I mean, you can run your incident and just, So, Mark, if you can unmute John for a second, I want to ask John Salka. John, you've talked about this a ton of times in class. We're talking large-scale incidents here, but let's back up to the box cards, run cards. How many times in class do you ask people, if you need more help, what do you say? You go, give me a second alarm, give me a fifth alarm, or whatever. And how many times do we hear people say they have nothing?
And what do we call it? The Chinese menu. Yeah, give me an engine from Circleville, give me a truck from Mudflatville, and give me the ambulance from Avonville. Avon's out on a call right now. The ambulance isn't available. Okay, how about one from... So there's a guy trying to run an incident, whether it be a 1 or 2 alarm fire or a gigantic storm, which involves, many more resources. And the dispatch is just sitting there listening instead of saying, okay, I'll fill that for you. I got your second alarm. And he if the first one's not available, there's a backup one and a third one available,
Exactly. So, and Jay, we got you back. Sorry about that, buddy. Technology. But, we've been talking large scale incidents, and the preparing part and the planning part before anything ever happens, then preparing for it. You talked about that, about getting food set up and everything else and so on and so forth, and having stuff set up with contractors to remove debris and everything from getting help for Public Works and Parks Department to get trees cleared and all kinds of things and water going and everything else. let's in our last we got about 10 minutes here, and we want to get some closing thoughts too. But so let's talk about the aftermath. We talked about leading up to planning, preparing, actually starting to handle the incident, but it doesn't stop when the sun comes out. So in Pearland, in your area, in your county, in that part of Texas, talk about the aftermath. Your thoughts about what do you have set up for now? Now we need to get people back to a normal way of life again.
Well, we had cut out on me a little bit, but I think I caught most of that. So the aftermath, what we did, we had our EOC set up for the operations perspective. But once we got through the operational period,
Scott, is it just me or we lose Jay again?
We lost him again.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I apologize, folks. It's technology. It happens all the time with the internet. And Kurt, we just need to run a cable from your office over to his.
Yeah,
office.
no kidding. Run it over and get him to bed.
But so Scott, go ahead. You're muted, buddy.
Oh, that's where the learning occurs in those after action reviews, right? If you don't, and we try to make all ours objective based whenever we do our day to day, but a large operation, we make it objective based. And if you don't meet the objective, you got one or two choices. You either modify the objective or you got to train differently, right? And so you're always updating, and you're always putting back into what you're trying to do as far as the mission. But it's part of our mission statement. The last part of ours is initiate the recovery process. So we start with preparation, we go through the whole response phase, and then we're going to connect them to the first level of recovery, whatever that looks like. The Red Cross, state assistance, federal assistance, whatever it is, to close that loop and make sure we're delivering the full realm of service.
Well, the after action report, again, let's go back to, and I hate saying it like this, but I have to, what some younger folks consider the boring part. Jay talked about the importance of recording everything finance-wise, so you can get reimbursed, and you have to have this separate. There's processes we have to follow and documents that have to be filled out just right, or you're going to be going through an appeal process to even get your city back the funds they deserve. And it goes back to we used to make fun of the sky's falling people, to now we go, oh my God, they're absolutely critical to our business as being professional firefighters and leaders in the fire service to handle and mitigating incidents. But Jay, we were getting to my question was to we were losing you. Talk about the aftermath. Curtis talked about having a good after action report and with objective basis, stuff like that. The sun comes out, but you still have water to deal with. You still have trees that are down. You still have people without power. You still have all this different stuff. Walk us through that process as well, the aftermath, and get people back on their feet, hours, days, weeks, months, and sometimes over a year.
So for us, Rick, we had a few challenges. So after the initial aftermath of the event itself, the hurricane's passed on, it's moved north of us. Then the reality sets in that we have a lot of people, millions of people in this area without power. And so in our city of 140,000, everyone was out of power for different amounts of time, depending on how quickly the power companies get back in here and organize that. Of course, they sent people from all over the country to come in and set up some really impressive processes and camps so that they could go out and start getting everybody up to full power. For us, we transitioned from an operational EOC to a recovery EOC. So we actually put our EPW, our engineering public works folks, the people that do that every day, just like we respond and help people every day. So what we do in a critical situation for us should be no different, because we practice the way we play. And so for us, it's just more of a high volume of the runs emergency responses we're making, but we're prepared for that because we do it every day. We do ICS every day. And so for us, it's just second act. So when we get to that recovery phase, we put our EPW folks in charge of that portion of the EOC. So we do get into the recovery, debris removal. We talked about keeping the construction debris, the CD, separated from the green debris, and how you coordinate that and get that message out to your community and where it's going to be, where it's located. You have all the permitting in place because you've gotten all the community approvals, the contracts, the city council approvals we spent $3.3 million to remove all the debris. And so it was over 200,000 cubic yards of debris that we removed from the city of Pearland. And that was done over a period of 45 days, which is really very impressive. But we had that set up ahead of time so that when we enacted that and brought those vendors in, then it's a coordination process, not only with our city departments that are handling that, but also with FEMA and also with TDM here in the state of Texas Department of Emergency Management. So having those parameters in place, they were handling that aspect. And at the same time, from an operational standpoint, the fire department, now we're getting hit with the increased call volume for EMS runs. So we have people without power. So now we're having to deal with the folks that are, and obviously, as it always works, we have 100, 105 degree temperatures during that time frame. So that just exacerbates the medical conditions of the people that we have within our community. So we're addressing those needs. Then we start having the fires on the backside of it. So it all comes, it just hitting it as you can, but being organized and being prepared ahead of time. I can't say it enough that you can't do this when the emergency, the disaster hits. You have to be prepared ahead of time. And I saw a comment that someone made earlier on here, and they asked, well, what would you suggest for a volunteer department? It's no different. It doesn't matter if you're paid or volunteer. You are serving your community. How do you serve them best? You're prepared ahead of time. And that's how we train, is how we play, and putting those components in place are what prepare us to be able to provide the exceptional services that our community here expects. And so we have a high level of expectation in our community. And if we're not doing the other 364 days of the year, if we're not preparing for that, then we're going to let down when the pressure's on us. You know, pressure's a privilege. That's why we do what we do. So you have to, it's no different than a playbook in a football game. That's why we have a deployment model, and the things that we do for a reason, so that you can operate seamlessly and limit the amount of mistakes you're going to make and still be able to make the audibles when you need to go in the different directions to address the needs that pop up unexpectedly.
Well, and Jeremy Cole asked something similar, from out near his area. What system would you suggest for multiple agencies from multiple states? Because he's kind of, I remember when I went, he's a good friend of mine. I went out there to teach for him. I think I stayed in a hotel. I flew into Pittsburgh, taught with him in Ohio, and stayed in a hotel in West Virginia or something like that. It was like all right there. So you're so close, like even where John's at, where you have like, in Texas, a lot of places, we've got a long ways to drive to get places where you get to some of the smaller regions where the state overlapping borders and all that. And my suggestion would be, unless you guys have is get a hold of your FEMA reps, get a hold of your state EOC people and go, okay, how do we cross the lines? Because we learned that with Hurricane Katrina. Scott, you and I were sitting there with 56 divers and boats that we couldn't send because of red tape. People were dying. We had cops that couldn't go because they weren't allowed. The National Guard could take somebody to a hardware store in Wyoming and make them stand in the street with a loaded weapon in New Orleans, but we couldn't send police officers there because of red tape. There was a lot of that stuff we had to get past. So I think contacting FEMA, contacting your state EOC people and going, okay, and then sitting down and planning for the big one, and going, let's walk through it. That's what, Mavis, the Mavis, you got to go. Mavis has their own website. You go to Mavis, they'll actually send a rep out. They'll actually help your state, county, department, or agency develop your own box card system. And that's, like I said, Kurt, that's investigator box cards, tanker box cards, hazmat box cards, MCI, technical rescue, structure fire, high rise, that all kind of play together to make sure they all overlap in that. I want to hit John real quick. Mark, if you can unmute him. John, so as we're finishing things out here, talk about the lessons learned, and I know there were a ton of them after 9/11. You got to see. I mentioned this when we lost you a little bit. You were with New York City for a long time prior to 9/11 and afterwards, working part of the rescue battalion, and no one ever thought we'd see something on such a large scale. And you and I have talked about the changes, the lessons learned, and just how much. I mean, it's amazing what New York City has done Homeland Security-wise since then, like a lot of places, because there's some people that fail to learn from a horrible event. Your thoughts on, I know it can always be better, but the progress made after 9/11 in New York City.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, I've been thinking about that, and I'm glad you asked me, because first of all, we could not have been more unprepared for that. Big fire department, lots of resources, lots of people, unlimited, not budget, but you know what I mean. Whatever we need, we get. They deal with it afterwards. But we could not have operationally and tactically been more unprepared for that. Nothing saw that coming. I was there. I was there that day. I was there within a couple of hours of it happening. I was there before the last building fell down. And we really only survived that. We really only managed to handle it as well as we did because we have so many people. We did a full recall. Everybody came back. I'll talk about that in a moment. Then they deployed a lot of people down there quite haphazardly. And I say that with a lump in my throat because it's not embarrassing. It's just a result of being the big city that we are. Everything just sort of bumbles along. And I don't think anybody does just routine daily fire operations and multiple arms better than us. We've had that in place for so long. We could do it with our eyes closed. But when it came to that day of 9/11, it was different. And we failed on a lot of ways, but we managed, and I think we kept our head above water. However, so many things were developed that didn't even exist that day. Recall was one of them. Recall in New York City was the fire department calling all the radio and TV stations and announcing that there's a full recall. And if you heard it, you went back to your station. That's all there was. The New York City Fire Department is announcing a full recall of all members, report to your station. And that's all there was. Some guys came. Most people did come because it was a gigantic event that everybody heard was happening. Now we have quite a technical event. Now everybody's phone numbers are recorded. You get a phone call. This is the New York City Fire Department calling your name, Battalion Chief John Salka. You'll be instructed to report to Yankee Stadium parking lot, a mall somewhere. They have all these different mustering points, and sometimes they'll call back a battalion or a shift or a borough or whatever it may be. So, I mean, that was just one thing. Our mutual aid system was non-existent. Being the big guys in town, we never called for help, and suddenly we needed it. And now we have a full, complete mutual aid system in place where volunteer and career departments have to register, come in and train. There's a place where they can pick up radios, and they have to have, fittings so their hose can fit our hose, and they have to respond in with 4 people minimum, nothing less than that, ladders and engines from different places. So, and I could go on and on with the other aspects of the operations, but all of it was learned. IMT teams, incident management teams now, we didn't even know what that was. We had the Forest Service in our firehouses, conducting incident management, duties. And now we have our own that we even send out now sometimes. So gigantic negative incident actually turned into be, in the end, it turned out to be a gigantic learning event for the FDNY and the city of New York.
Well, and there's so many things since then, that you've had occur. The hurricane that you guys had that impacted everything, and how much better everything has run now. I mean, it's simple things. I don't call it simple. Seeing the green front pieces all of a sudden, and this team showing up at the command post for large scale incidents that have all the pre-plans at their fingertips, and they have their own drones, and they're flying around showing the battalion chief, showing the incident commander the top of the building, what's going on in the back, what's going on block.
Absolutely. I mean, and these drones have thermal recognition stuff on them. The drone captain can call the chief and tell him your fire's in the rear corner, the BC corner, because they're using this little drone. Amazing stuff that has either directly or subsequently resulted from 9/11.
Oh, having that person show up at your command post is incredible, and I thought that's pretty amazing. So, all right, let's go around the table here. Scott, advice you'd have for other chiefs? You're all over the country, visiting with different people and that, teaching, doing your programs. What do you tell them about being prepared for the big one?
Spend the time to really understand the capabilities and limitations of your system. It has to start there. You got to look beyond the day-to-day and think about, what can we do, in-house. We like to take care of that first 3 days by ourselves if we can before we really start to get big time state and federal stuff. But as we've said 100 times, success is in preparation. You can't over prepare. But you can to a degree. I mean, it's got to be sensible. It's got to make sense. It can't be the sky's falling every time there's a cloud. You know it here, Rick. When we're in the tornado season, we may set the sirens off 3 times in a week. It's constant, and so you got to manage that. You got to have good communication plans. Make sure we have that unified command model where the egos are out the door and everybody understands what their roles and responsibilities are. But you really can't over prepare for something, and you got to think outside the box. What is the worst possible scenario that can happen in our little area, and then start planning for those type of things. So it's just staying on top of it, know your capabilities and limitations, and plan and prepare and communicate.
Well, Scott, how many times when you and I were working, we worked together for a decade in Louisville, we'd get the ice storm coming. I'll get one of those, and we would hire back,
Right.
we'd put 4 more ambulances on the street, 3 or 4 more engines, another couple ladders, extra
Brush trucks, the 4-wheel drives in service, all that stuff.
And there were times nothing happened. Or for our large scale like events like the 4th of July, it's like, and you spend a lot of money, and some guys.
Where would you rather get caught though, right? You'd rather be over prepared than under prepared.
Exactly. That's kind of like I talk about the Bulls championships where it's like, well, we're good now. Boom. And then, well, let's get, I'd rather be over prepared than under prepared. Just like you said, Scott, that's a great point. Curtis, one more time, tell some of your people out there how to keep their people motivated from the operations side that, like I said before, the thing we least want to do as company officers is do reports and all the more mundane stuff. Yet some of that's the most important stuff for us as leaders when it comes to data management and get things done and mitigating an incident.
Rick, I got to run real quick. They're kicking me out of this room. I had it reserved till 1. Thanks, I got to drive home. Thanks, y'all.
Hey, brother.
Send Mark the bill.
Pay the bill.
Kurt, go ahead, buddy.
I think the biggest thing is, like we were talking about, is just make this part of your normal life in the firehouse and at the fire department, but also include everybody. We talk about building plans and we talk about putting things together and having everybody involved. Talk about that down to the newest guy or to the junior folks, because they're going to see things that we don't, or things that we have overlooked, and make them understand that this is part of life. From June till November, hurricanes are always in the back of our minds, and we have to have everybody involved with that. So everybody's got a part of it, and just making it normal. Not, like I said, the less we can make it break here in case of emergency glass, the better off we are, because it's part of our DNA.
Oh, it's John and I talk about all the time in our classes, Kurt. I don't think I've ever met a firefighter that looks to look like a fool or be embarrassed when they look like they don't know what they're doing or not prepared. Mm-hmm. Firefighters have a tremendous amount of pride. They have a tremendous amount of love for what they do. And, but that doesn't come by just handling the exciting stuff. It comes by being prepared, like you said from the very beginning.
No, and you can't make these through on your own, too. Sometimes we got to get out of our own way and understand that, like our high water vehicles, our public works folks drive those. The firefighters don't. We need to be in the back. And then the police officers are the one pushing around old security. So we have all 3 departments on those things, and it works great. And we have a great team, and we work great together. But
Exactly.
it's thinking about that is using people for different things at different times during your operation and getting them ahead of the time so that you're practicing.
Exactly. Well, Chief Taylor, I apologize. I know sometimes it happens with us with the internet back and forth and that, but Jay, what advice would you give? You've firsthand managed. First of all, Irving, you guys had the Cowboys there forever, a lot of large scale stuff, DFW, all those different things. So managing and planning for large scale incidents is nothing new to you. And then you move down there because you want more punishment with hurricanes and everything else. What do you say to some of your fellow wizards, some of your fellow chiefs when it comes to handling some of these large scale incidents? What advice do you give them?
We talked about preparation, but Scott and Curtis nailed it. You do those things and you prepare every day, but I would add to that and say, don't micromanage your people on a daily basis, because when you go out and train and you prepare for these things and you micromanage your people, when you get in a situation where it's an emergent disaster type situation, your people have to be able to think and function on their own. And if you haven't prepared them to do that, you're going to fail miserably. Excuse me, I can't talk today. But that's to me is another component to what they've said is you have to be consistent and not micromanaging your people. You give them the tools to succeed. You give them the means to train. You give them the direction, the expectation, but you've got to allow them to make those decisions. Just like and I made the decision personally, I put it on my station captains to make the decisions if they need to respond or not, because we were getting wind speed readings. It's 25 minutes from where we sit to Station 8 on the west side of town. And so we were having 80, 90 mile an hour winds on the west side. It was 40 mile an hour on this side at a certain point. And so we were only getting an average of the wind speeds in the ELC. So for me to collectively shut them down and not respond would be putting us in a bad situation and not providing that service to the community. So our officers needed to make that decision at their locations, at those firehouses, in coordination with the battalion chiefs, so that they could provide that best service. I think during the whole 12 hours, there was about an hour and 15 minutes where we didn't respond, where it was up high enough where it was absolutely dangerous. The rest of the time they were out there, but that was their decision. And if I took that over and made that ancillary decision, because I don't check my ego at the door, somebody would have died. The 3 or 4 CPRs we went on during that time frame, we would have missed one of those. And at the end of the day, the camera would have been in my face. And that's a difficult question to answer when that camera's in your face.
Oh, you're exactly right. And it goes back to having great bosses, great leaders like yourself that allow their officers to make decisions. And I want to just key on that real quick. We were joking about before we went live about, you see some of these weather people on the Weather Channel at these storms, they're out there and they're like, and the wind is, and they're like this, and 2 civilians walk by them like drinking a coffee and stuff. And it's like, so how do you explain it was 90 miles an hour on one side and we didn't respond where it's 40 where you can? Mm-hmm. So you've got to ask, those officers and rely on their common sense, their leadership skills, their experience to make those decisions for you. I think when you take that away from them, you're hamstrung. And it's just a great example of another great leadership story, Jay, that you empower your people to do that, because some places don't do that. So, hey, Jay, if another chief wanted to talk to you, let's 2 ways. Somebody said we'd like to have Chief Taylor come out and do a program for us on, preparation for the large scale incidents, or another chief just want to pick your brain on what you've had, so they don't, we've all done that. I've done it. Pick up the phone. Hey, how did you do that?
Yeah.
What's a good email for them to reach out to you at?
An email for me, really the easiest one is Chief, CHIEF, JT3, the number 3 at gmail.com. That's my personal email. Reach out to me anytime. It's chiefjt3 at gmail.com. Also, J.Taylor on Facebook. There's also our official page. I have the Pearland Fire Chief J. Taylor. Any of those measures, and you can find me on LinkedIn at J. Taylor. So any one of those, reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to share things to do with preparation, but I also love talking leadership. And me, I love talking football too. I refereed it for 25 years, and a lot of those leadership components, they really overlap between the fire service and football, and it's really interesting how those play together. But I'm out there anytime, any questions I can answer, and anytime I talk to somebody, I learn from them as well. So it's always a dual benefit.
Well, I want to brag on your people too. To our listeners, to our viewers, if you're ever in the Houston metro area and you want to stop and visit a great fire department, any firehouse in Pearland, the doors are always open, the coffee pot's always on, or some sweet tea.
Yeah.
Stop by. That's how they work, and I love it. You can walk in any firehouse there, and they make you feel welcome, like you're at home. So, again, another spot on point of the leadership that goes on with Pearland. Curtis, good email for them to get a hold of you, buddy.
Yeah, if anybody wants to contact me, it's cbirt@me.com.
Perfect. And Chief Salka, John, Mark, can you unmute him for a second there? No, John's been trapped. John, good email for them to get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you.
Oh, for me?
Yeah. Good email.
Yeah, Chief John Salka at gmail.com.
Perfect. And I'll do Chief Thompson's. Chief Thompson is sthompson@thecolonytx.gov. I'm Chief Lasky at gmail.com. Jay, we can't thank you enough for coming on board. We got to get you on here more often. Appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. I'm glad you mentioned the refereeing thing, because when I asked about your bio, there were a couple things, and well, maybe you don't want to talk about that, but 25 years reffing, officiating football is pretty huge. And you're right, all those leadership. I can't imagine you're managing a fire department and you're out there managing 2 teams of coaches and everything else at the same time. The similarities between the two are pretty awesome.
Rick, the best training in the world for conflict resolution is standing on the sideline with a coach that makes a multi-million-dollar contract, and his lifestyle is predicated on the decisions of 18-year-old boys. There's a lot of irony in that.
Exactly. Well, hey, folks, we're on most of the social media sites, as we said. So if you'd like to get us, run over there. John and I have got a ton of programs coming out. A lot of the company officer academies, a lot of our other classes that we do. So get a hold of us for that. Our next show date is, let me see, we're going to be October. Hang on one second here. October 16th. And I think what we're going to try and do is, Curtis now has one of his sons in the fire service in Galveston. John's got one of his sons in Goose Creek, South Carolina. Scott's got 2 of them in Arlington. And I think we're going to try and have a family affair for next month's show. But we're the third. Our Hump Day, the Issues and Challenges of Fire Service, the third Wednesday of every month. You can join us here at noon Central Time. There's also some great podcasts every night at fireengineering.com with some great people. Check that out. Just go, you go to the ribbon bar at the top of fireengineering.com. You can click anything from FDIC to Firefighter Nation to Fire Apparatus, to all that stuff. It's great. We mentioned it's the Air Force. Our Air Force's birthday today. So thank you to our Air Force veterans. God bless you. We ask you at every one of our shows to please keep in mind the men and women in our armed forces and pray for them. And never forgetting means never forgetting. Be careful. God bless you. And we will see you next time.